Alrighty. Baruch Hashem and Baruch Haba. Welcome to our advanced studies here at Congregation Mashiach Yisrael. Amen. My name's Scott Siskin, and tonight we're going to be studying the Tanya, Alter Rebbe's Tanya, Perek Tet Vav, chapter 15, in Likutei Amorim Sefer Shel Beinani, the Tanya. Mi yiftach otana b'tefila uvracha. Who would like to open us with prayer and a blessing?
Avi, thank you that you have given us the opportunity to study, to learn, to know, to incorporate your ways and your words into our lives so that we can be what you sent us here to be, that we can be better, that we can shine your light in this world, that we can make a way. Give us wisdom, knowledge, and understanding to learn, to hear, and to see, and to know more and more and more each time we study. In Yeshua's name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Who wants to do the blessing?
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Baruch Hashem.
The short versions, huh?
That's about as short as it comes. Alrighty, so tonight we're studying chapter 15 in Tanya. Where have we come from and where are we going?
That is the longest version of the blessing.
Are you kidding me? This is Judaism. It gets way longer than that.
Oh, well.
Try morning shacharis, right?
Yeah, right.
But a particular blessing, that is the long form.
That's about as short as it's going to come, yeah. Alright, so chapter 15. Again, where have we come from and where are we going? Chapters 1 through 8.
14.
Yeah.
We're going to 6.
But what does it mean, Basil? Chapters 1 through 8, we discuss the spiritual composition of a Jew, a non-Jew, of the world at large, the klipot. We talked about the sephirot in God's image, or the soul powers, our attributes in our image. Chochmah, bina, da'at, chesed, gevurah, tiferet, netzach, hod, yesod, and malchut. We talked about the three garments of the soul, thought, speech, and deed. And why did the Alter Rebbe give us all of this information? What was he trying to tell us by starting off Tanya this way? He was trying to answer some questions. Do you remember any of those questions?
Why, how, when, where?
Why, how, when, where, what?
Who is God? How were we made?
Our-
How are we
our
made
makeup
in His image?
And God's
Yes.
makeup and how we came to be.
Absolutely true. You're both right. Torah points around.
Okay.
What was the Alter Rebbe trying to answer specifically? He was looking at a verse, right? Very important, special verse we quote very often here.
Deuteronomy 30:14.
30:14. What does it say?
It says,
The Torah is near you, and you can do it.
And you can do it. Exceedingly near to you.
This is the short version.
Kikara velecha hadover ma'od. This thing is very near to you. Torah and mitzvot. It's very near to you in your mouth. Beficha, ulavavcha, and in your heart. La soto, that you should do it. That you can actually be able to do it. This is the Alter Rebbe's long, shorter way of Tanya. What is the long, shorter way? That we, as sentient beings, with a knowledge of God, should recognize Him down here in such a way that we first control our garments, and then we actually start to work on our understanding and our emotions, our intellect and our emotions, that we can change how we process things and actually bring more godly light into the world. How do we bring more godly light into the world? Studying Torah and doing mitzvahs, right? When we are giving charity, it looks like God's around, right? And that's the goal. And if you think for 1 minute that it's not very easy to do that, it's very near to you, right? Very easy.
Why does it look like God's around? Because we become His
hands. His extension, right?
Uh-huh.
And that's the purpose of creation. That's God's will for us. That God should be able to be recognizable here in this lowliest world. There is no world lower than this one. That God should be recognizable down here. Gehenna's higher than this. It's a spiritual world. It doesn't get lower than earth, right? Physicality is the lowest it gets.
Doesn't it refer to down?
Yeah. Down in spiritual standing, maybe. But in the chain-like descent of worlds, there's nothing lower than us. Right. There's no place more where God is more concealed. You talk about Gehenna, you talk about hell.
Okay.
People know who God is in hell. right? There's no question there.
Well,
Where is there a
they
question?
should know that.
If they, not, they, have, they get their attitude adjustment, right?
Mm-hmm.
So God's will, the purpose of creation is that God should be revealed here where he is most concealed, in this lowly physical world. How does that happen? Through his children. That we should connect to him by revealing him here. And this is the meaning of what Isaiah said, make straight in the desert a highway for God, that we should prepare this dwelling place for him. So the whole purpose of creation, again, is Exodus chapter 25, verse 8, where it says, have them build me, have them turn this world into a tabernacle for me. And then I will dwell among them, within them, right? So, in an effort to explain this, the Alter Rebbe began Tanya talking about who we are, who God is, what the world is, what's it look like. And then in chapters 9 through 17, the Alter Rebbe is explaining to us this war between the worlds, right? This war between the souls. We have a godly soul, little angel on the right shoulder, saying, no, you should do godly stuff. And you have the animal soul saying, but I'm hungry and I'm tired and I'm fill in your blank. And they're battling over control over our body, right? They all want control over our thoughts and our actions and our words. The small city. And the Alter Rebbe has been describing a more precise definition of the word Beinani, intermediate. We've discussed and we will discuss that it's not someone who has half mitzvahs and half sins, but it's someone who, what? What is a Beinani? The introductions are helpful, I promise.
A Beinani. Go ahead.
He has mastered his evil inclination.
In what sense?
In the sense that
When it comes to him, he doesn't go with it.
that he doesn't fall into sin,
Right.
Though he's tempted by it on a daily basis.
It's perfect.
But he has not totally mastered or
Hasn't even begun to master.
taken control over his soul powers.
Right. So while the Beinani toes the line in his thoughts, he always thinks the right things. In his speech, he always says the right things. And in his actions, he always does mitzvahs, and he never sins. At the same point, he battles, right? He hasn't changed the way he thinks yet. He hasn't changed the way he feels yet. And as such, he's constantly struggling. He knows God said, don't eat that spider. And he's looking at it, but it's so... Maybe that's not a good example.
Spiderish.
It doesn't look delicious.
Let's get a better answer. You're at the store, and the cash register is open, and the attendant's gone, right? And you know God said don't steal, but the drawer's open right there, and no one's around. There's no cameras, right? The Beinani would struggle with that. A normal human would struggle with that. Bezrat Hashem, with God's help, a normal human should say that's not the right thing to do. Maybe even close the register for you, right? The fact of the matter is, the Beinani is going to think about, what if I took that? Right? And then immediately, the Beinani, because he mastered his thoughts and his speech and his deeds, he hasn't mastered the way he understands things, but he did master his thoughts. The Beinani is going to say, I can't think like that. I have to push that thought out. Let's think about God, and let's move away from this temptation, right? That's the Beinani. We talked about the tzaddik. The tzaddik is a little bit different because, unlike the Beinani, even though he does control his thoughts and his speech and his deeds, the tzaddik has begun to, or even completely, mastered his soul powers, mastered his intellect, and mastered his emotion in such a way that he's no longer tempted, right? The tzaddik sees things different. He understands things differently. He's not tempted by the lusts and the passions and the cravings of this world, right? That's the difference between a tzaddik and a Beinani. The difference between a Beinani and a Rasha.
That's a very easy definition to where you brought us. The Rasha has mastered neither.
Neither. That's all I'm trying to say.
That's funny.
Hasn't changed the way he thinks.
That's funny.
Hasn't changed the way he feels. And he doesn't toe the line. In the thoughts, he thinks things he shouldn't. He says things he shouldn't, or she shouldn't. And he does things that he or she should not do. Right? And that's the map that the Alter Rebbe is trying to set up for us here. Tonight, in chapter 15, we're going to go a little bit deeper into the concept of a Beinani. And we're going to see, well, what makes a Beinani a Beinani? We've said this a dozen times so far. The Beinani masters his thoughts and his speech and his deeds. He doesn't sin. He doesn't speak words of lashon hara. He doesn't think inappropriate things. But he still struggles. He still battles. What does that mean, he still struggles and he still battles? And how is that significant to God? That's chapter 15 tonight. So, our handy dandy map of Tanya has an introduction for tonight. It entitled this chapter of 15, Two Levels of Beinoni. Two levels of Beinoni. We talked before about levels of tzaddikim, right? What are the levels of, if I could just sneak this from you, thank you. What are the levels of the tzaddikim, right? Someone...
Complete and incomplete.
Complete and incomplete. A tzaddik is someone who has at least begun to master his soul powers, his understanding, and his intellect, and his emotions. How much? If it was a little bit, then he's a partial tzaddik. If it's all the way, he's like an Abraham or a Moshe. He mastered it. He's a perfect tzaddik. Similarly, bam, that's special effects for you, 5 The Rasha, right? The Rasha is measured on the level of guilt, right? If the Rasha is completely guilty, then he's not much of a Rasha at all, right? He's actually a pretty good guy, and he slipped. There should be more people like it, right? Or somebody who doesn't feel any guilt at all, right? His level of guilt is 0%. He's completely a Rasha. He's pathological. He's an addict at this point, right? He feels no guilt. It's just the program that he's designed for himself. He made a second nature of evil in his situation. So we've talked about levels of tzaddikim, and we've talked about levels of Rashayim. Now let's talk about levels of Beinoni. Two levels of Beinoni. And we take this from a verse. This is a verse that you should be familiar with. It's Malachi, in the 12 prophets. Malachi, chapter, what do we have here? Chapter 3, verse 18. And it says, let's see here. You'll take a look back and you're going to see, I'm paraphrasing here, the difference between the tzaddik and the rasha, between one who serves God and one who doesn't serve God. That's the verse Malachi 3:18. So, initially, one might think that this is poetic repetition because, you know, the prophets, we don't understand what they say anyway, so let's just make it fit our understanding, right? No. There's no repetition, there's nothing redundant, there's nothing superfluous in the entire Bible. If God put extra words there, it's for a very important reason and a message and a lesson for us, yeah? As such, we can't say, take a look back, says Malachi. Look at the difference between a tzaddik and a rasha, between one who serves God and one who doesn't. This isn't going to be the tzaddik is the one who serves and the rasha is the one who doesn't. It's beautiful poetry. No. The tzaddik and the rasha are one level. The one who serves God and the one who doesn't serve God, those are our two levels of Beinoni, and that's what we're going to study tonight. What does it mean to be a Beinoni who serves God versus one who doesn't? So the rest of
How can you be a Beinoni but not serve God?
Very interesting question. We're going to have to look at it. And it has to do with that concept of battle. Does he fight?
Well, you can't be a Beinoni unless you fight, because you would have to master a certain level of overcoming being a rasha just to be a Beinoni. And if you're not doing it for God, why would you do it at all?
Very good question. We're going to examine some things tonight and hopefully illuminate that question. But that's the question. That's what we're working on here. Okay. So our handy-dandy map of Tanya introduces this chapter saying, two levels of Beinoni. The one who serves God wages war with his nature and his habit. Naturally, he wants the lusts and the pleasures of life, and he fights them, and he wins, right? The one who doesn't serve God is a Beinoni through no accomplishment of his own, but rather it's due to his own natural, mild nature. He's the bookworm, right? He's not out there in the clubs guys. And the, you know. Right guy. He's just one of these people who naturally does the right thing, the valedictorian, right?
Is that pleasing to you?
That is the Chassidic question. Which does God prefer? God says we can all be a Beinoni. What would he really like? And how is that different from a tzaddik? And what does that mean for us today? That's chapter 15 in a nutshell. Okay. Who would like to begin reading?
I'll read.
Go for it.
With the above in mind, we may now understand the text. And you shall return and discern between the righteous and the wicked, between the one who serves God and the one who does not serve him. The difference between one who serves God and a righteous man, a tzaddik, is that one who serves Oved, God.
Oved means a servant. In this tense that it is here with the O and then the A, it's present tense, active. He's serving, right? Constantly moving.
In the active present is one who is engaged in active service, namely the struggle against the evil nature in an effort to gain mastery over it and to banish it from the small city, that it should not vest itself in the organs of the body. Let me ask a question.
Sure.
I heard something today, which of course you hear a million times, but always fun when you're reminded, because our brain can't just hold everything. And I thought about this, so that it doesn't, master over it and to banish it from the small city, that it should not vest itself in the organs of the body. Verily, it entails much effort and toil to wage constant war with it. This is a banished. So, you hear that is the root of bitterness. And bitterness literally can take a happy-go-lucky person and turn them into a miserable person.
Right.
Because they let that small little worm overcome the small city.
How long does it take? Depends on the person.
Right. It takes a little bit of time. It could be 10 years.
Could be.
But the point is very interesting. I was reading. Can I take a little second?
Sure.
I'm reading a fascinating book, and that is totally something that just interested me on the side. Can I say the name of the book, or is that right?
I mean, what was it in the book?
It was talking about forgiveness, and it very interesting, and it's a faith book. It's about faith, and it was talking about different quotes from different people, and they were interviewing people on forgiveness, and different ways to look at forgiveness, and one just struck me as brilliant. Something had inadvertently, and it's mostly talking about, when bad things happen or something, somebody does something that, and it's just huge. It's not a little offense, it's huge.
Right.
And this one man went to this other person who had inadvertently, accidentally caused something horrible. It wasn't his intention, he didn't plan it out,
right.
So you have a background. And he said, I forgive you, because he was the recipient.
Right.
You have to forgive yourself. I want you to set a time and a date to forgive yourself. It was, and the other person was like, how could you even begin to forgive me? What I did was horrible, even though inadvertent. And he said, it wasn't him, it's God's grace in me and my faith in him, but forgiveness frees you.
Right.
It doesn't have anything to do
no
with
longer
the
have
people.
To spend energy to hold a grudge.
The other people. But that's, and it, again, hit that other root of bitterness, is when you don't have that forgiveness or that satisfaction or that whatever. And
You're
then I heard,
constantly spending energy.
well, you're spending energy because, and it's normal to be hurt. How you process that hurt, or life is not fair, or something bad happened, or whatever. But also the same token of letting it go. Letting it go.
Right. And what a powerful tool that is. And the fact that we can even do that.
But it's all about this, is it, yes. But I think we need to learn to do that. Sure. And the hardest, they had a quote that the hardest people to forgive is ourselves. For our own lack, for our own humanity, for our own stupidity, for our own whatever. Totally. But literally, that's what he said, is you need to set a date and a time and decide you're not going one day beyond that time to ruin the rest of you've wasted enough time on it.
Sure.
Now you're going to just let it go and you're going to go forward. And forgiveness is accepting the fact that you can't change the past. I thought that was brilliant. But all those things is this, is that mastery over it to banish it from the small city, because that small city is so precious, and so vulnerable, so subject to everything around us that we need to guard it. And I never realized quite as much as how we have to really guard it.
We really do. We're sponges,
Guard it from outside, but guard it from inside too. I just thought it was amazing how they all kind of played in for me.
Psychologically speaking, there's a lot there. It's difficult to forgive ourselves because we don't look at our own faults, hence we bury them. So if you've never confronting it, it becomes an issue. They
actually talked that too. It's like they were talking about a priest. They were interviewing different people about forgiveness, and the priest said, you can tell if somebody is ready to forgive if they accept the fault of the action. If they come in saying, my wife,
right,
or my
like Adam,
husband,
right? This woman you gave me, maybe.
Yes. Do it, right? So he said, well, go tell your wife to come in and for what do they call that? Oh, for confession. For confession.
Gotcha.
So in other words, if you're standing in there saying, you're not really asking for your own forgiveness, you're justifying your actions.
Right.
So he would make a joke and say, you go get that person, you tell him to come to confession, it'll all work out.
Nice. I like the way Rabbi Manis Friedman put it, talking about people who can't forgive themselves after whatever. Mm-hmm. He said, what's your problem? He gets right there. Exactly what's your problem?
Right.
It's like, well, this guy over here forgave you. There's no bad blood anymore. It's fine. It's over with. Why are you still sour about it?
Right. And
he said, I don't forgive myself. And Rabbi Friedman was like, excuse me. When were you made the judge, right? You're the perpetrator, right? You were declared not guilty. You don't have a say in it anymore, right? You've been declared innocent, right?
Did you ever
so
see
beautiful.
Bob Newhart's skit? The $5 psychology advice?
I'm not sure.
I
don't think so.
He's talking to the person, and this is going to cost you $5, okay? And he's talking to the person, and identify the problem or what they're not doing, and he says, "Just do it."
And that's it.
Exactly.
$5, please, right? Sometimes we need that kick, though.
I think the knowledge that it's okay to do that. Sometimes
Right.
I think people hold on
It's
to
not
their
gonna catch
guilt
up to
because
you.
they
Right.
and they think other people expect you to hold on to it, and it's like, why would you let it steal one more? That, and if we really believe that God, all things are from God, if it wasn't meant to be, it wouldn't be in the first place.
Absolutely.
So why are you even on the fence about forgiveness or not for yourself? It's like, if this is the path God had for me, then if I would have gone that path, I would have gone in the wrong direction. So thank you, God, and I'm moving over here. Life is
my
good.
Mistake, right?
Yes, exactly.
There's no good sense in it to let it not only ruin your past, but
ruin
also
your
your
future.
present and future.
What do you
Crazy.
accomplish by
Right.
turning over on that same thing?
Exactly.
Rabbi Zalman and I were speaking a little bit earlier today about, the adversary and how...
Fourth generation?
we didn't even get very far with that.
No, but that's a key in our posture this week.
Yeah, I heard that this morning,
It's the job of the adversary to whisper little sweet nothings into our ear to show us how very not worthy we are to stand before God.
Exactly.
When God forgives something, it's done.
It's white, it's clean.
So when we bring it back up after it's done, that's almost a transgression in itself, chas v'sholem, right?
Yes, exactly.
Because this, which the Almighty has decided to never look at again.
Right, you have
you
the
now all of a sudden, and you're
Right.
exactly.
But that's when you, as a Beinoni, right away, and especially from what I've read, first thing in the morning is often a very good time when you first are not even awake for Hasatan to be right there whispering in your ear. That's a time as a Beinoni that you take those thoughts captive and say, we're not going down this road today.
Right.
Because
again, be aware
I've
you're in the
been
ring,
cleaned. I've been forgiven. I've been whatever.
This is done. I don't need to worry about that anymore.
Right, exactly. Brilliant. Verily it entails much effort and toil to wage constant war with it. This is the Beinoni. And I think this is right out of Yeshua's words, to wage constant war.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
There will be tsuris. And I keep hearing this over and over for the last week, is the only thing we can control is our reaction to everything. That's what we're here to do.
That's it.
What is your reaction? Not what happened to me, and I can't protect myself, but I can control my reaction.
And that's really all that we're judged on. I mean, going back to your point earlier, without spending too much more time on it, but in this world, you have to do everything that you possibly can to make sure that you do things right whenever you're doing it, right?
Yes.
This is part of the justification why God let Moshe send the spies in the first place.
Right.
If you're going into a land with military exercises, it's the natural human response to be able, well, where do we enter, right? Where do we go in? Mm-hmm. We need that information. So because it's our job to do everything as best as we possibly can, right? If you, God forbid, get hurt, chas v'sholem, you don't sit there around circle this guy around and lay hands on him and pray for him and expect that God's going to miraculously heal a broken leg. You take that guy to the hospital and then you pray. right?
As you're praying.
That's
Go to
Judaism.
hospital.
Some of Moshe's words were so that we can determine how to go up and take it.
Absolutely
Right.
true.
Right?
Right.
Not
We need-
whether we will.
Right. The fact that God says it's going to happen is one thing. The fact that we are a part of this, we need to play our role, right?
Right.
As such, we need to prepare everything and make sure everything's perfect before we engage.
Right.
After that,
As perfect
if something
as possible.
as perfectly as we possibly can do it, exactly right.
Right.
If after that it didn't work out, the best laid plans of mice and men and all that.
Mm-hmm.
If it doesn't work out after that, you need to recognize your contribution there. Could I have tried better? Could I have planned better? Did I learn a lesson?
Right.
And you need to accept the fact that maybe sometimes God wanted you to experience something like this, right? Maybe it wasn't about the outcome, right? There's everything under heaven is under the control of heaven except for the fear of heaven.
Right.
All that we have is our moral choices. What's the moral choice? Our reaction.
Right.
So if God decided, listen, I need for this guy, because in 10 years there's going to be something.
Yes.
And he's going to need this
Yes.
experience to get him through that.
Yes.
So he needs to have this experience now.
Yes.
And I spent my whole time planning and I did everything perfect and it didn't work out at all.
Mm-hmm.
And now I get sore and beat up about it and I run away from God for God only knows how long.
Mm-hmm.
You need to understand God wanted you to experience that too. But it was my failure. That's fine. Don't fail again.
Right.
Learn what you can from that.
Learn.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree 100%.
If there's a lesson learned, it's not a failure.
That's
That's
exactly
God's
right.
point, right?
Yes.
We don't always choose whether or not our envelope that we crafted for God's blessing is a failure or not, right? We
Right.
try to do the best we can crafting this envelope, and then God
Right.
fills it with whatever He'd like to fill it with. And it's all good,
It's all good. The Zadok, however, is designated servant, Eved of God, which is a title already earned, as the title sage or king is bestowed on one who has already become a sage or king.
So just to take a look at that, the term we used before was Oved.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're talking Eved, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Oved means like
What's the difference?
Action.
present tense versus title, essentially.
Oh, okay.
So when we talk about in the
But it refers to the same thing. Otherwise,
kind of, right? But there's a subtle nuance here. There's a differentiation.
one is the doing.
Oved
one
is serving.
Present
Eved is a
active
is a
servant.
servant.
We say in the Adon Olam, we say Vahu Haya, Vahu Hoveh, Vahu Yiyeh, right? So Vahu Hoveh, Oveh, like Oved, right?
Oh, okay.
That means present. He's currently the king. God is reigning right now. R-E-I-G-N.
Who
Whereas-
was, who was, who is, and is to come.
Right.
Right.
So that's
Or
present
will be.
present tense, right?
Mhm.
And active. Whereas Eved is more of a title. It's a noun. It's not a
Servant.
verb like it is
Gotcha.
when it's used Oved.
Well, I see right here. One who serves God, Oved, and
Servant.
Over here.
designated servant of God,
Right.
Eved.
And like that's what God says about Moshe, right? How were you not terrified to mess with my Eved, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not my serving, but my servant. Right?
Which is a title already earned, as the title sage or king is bestowed on one who has already become a sage or king. So is this person who has already effected and completely accomplished his task of waging war against the evil in him, with the result that he has expelled it and it has disappeared and his heart has become void within him.
Just like King David, he fasted the evil inclination right out of him.
Mm-hmm.
So, just to go back to our verse, Malachi chapter 3, verse 18. Go back, return, look at the difference, and discern between the tzaddik and the rasha, between the oved and one who doesn't serve, right?
Mm-hmm.
Between one who serves and one who doesn't serve.
Mm-hmm.
So right now, the Alter Rebbe has already said that tzaddik and the oved cannot be the same person, right? Because the tense is different.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
It's a little bit more complex than that, but we're just starting, so.
He has said the Sonic and the
One who serves God cannot be the same person.
as the Eved,
Right.
servant of God.
Right. A tzaddik is an Eved. The one who serves God is an Oved. What does this mean? How is it different? And what does it mean for us and our purposes here? And that's our first portion here in chapter 15. Kosh?
Kosh.
Okay.
All right.
In the category of Beinoni, there are also to be found two gradations, namely, one who serves God and one who does not serve him.
So the Alter Rebbe is saying the second part of Malachi 3:18 is not referring to a tzaddik or a rasha in its proper tense, or in its proper term, but this is talking about two different levels of Beinoni, which we haven't discussed anywhere in Tanya yet. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yet the latter is not wicked, for never in his life did he commit even a minor transgression, and moreover he fulfilled all the commandments which were possible for him to fulfill, including the study of the Torah, which balances everything else, his mouth never ceasing from study.
So we're not saying Bainani like one toes the line with his garments and the other one doesn't. They both do. That's why they're baining him.
The reason he is referred to as one who does not serve him is that he does not wage any battle against his evil disposition.
The music stops, so does that mean it's...
I don't know.
Shalom, Elisheva.
Shalom,
Right.
shalom.
Let's keep reading here.
We're in the middle of reading, Lisa. Hi, Lisa.
Chapter 15.
Chapter 15, the portion of the first of Shabbat in the leap year.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, where was I?
That's what the little L is.
Yeah. Where are you? Torah, which balances everything else, his mouth never ceasing from study.
The reason he is referred to as one who does not serve him is that he does not wage any battle against his evil disposition in order to vanquish it by means of the divine light that irradiates the divine soul, whose abode is in the brain, which predominates over the heart, as explained above. For his disposition does not confront him at all in an attempt to distract him from study and prayer, and he is consequently never obliged to wage war against it. How is that even possible?
This is what we're talking about. So we said, what's the difference between a Bainani and a Tzaddik? Real quick. The Bainani and the Tzaddik, they both master their garments. They both don't sin in their thoughts or their words or their actions.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
However, the difference between a Bainani and a Tzaddik is that the Tzaddik has started to master, or completely mastered, his soul powers, right? So his intellect and his emotion, the Tzaddik has begun to transform. And now he's starting to not want to sin anymore, right? He's starting to not crave those human desires anymore.
Because that's an interesting line, isn't it?
That's the difference
For
between the
his
Tzaddik and the Bainani.
disposition does not confront him at all.
So what happens if there's an individual? This is the point. What happens if there's an individual and he toes the line? He's like a Bainani. He doesn't sin in any of his garments, thought, speech, or deed. However, what if, and you've said it often in our study here, what's the difference between a Tzaddik and a Bainani? The Bainani battles. He wages a war. He's always fighting. He's always craving. He's always repressing that desire and doing the godly thing anyways. He's a real mensch, right? What happens if there's a Bainani who has not begun at all to transform his soul powers? He hasn't gone up this 100% at all. He still loves evil all the way like a normal person. So what if there's an individual who hasn't begun to change his soul powers, however, he doesn't fight? Could such a person exist? And what does it mean for this rank of Bainani, and how does God feel about that? Can we think of people who are just a certain kind of person who, doesn't battle with some specific whatevers, right? Pick a sin. There's some people who are just not foodie people, right?
Yeah,
and
they might not battle with one, but I'm sure they battle with something.
Okay, fine.
So it might not be stealing might not be their thing.
Maybe it was too general of a statement.
Gotcha. Okay.
Try to make some kind of distinction at all, and we can see what the Alter Rebbe is trying to do here. Okay. If there's a person who's like really not passionate about food, just give me a sandwich and I'll be fine. They probably don't have a burning desire to eat a ham sandwich, right? They're probably going to do whatever is safe and best and kosher and stuff. That said, is that because that person mastered his soul powers? Or is that because that person was born with a natural inclination not to desire this whatever? If that's the case, and there's a Bainani here who doesn't desire this stuff, whatever the sin is, but hasn't transformed his soul powers, does that put him into a new rank? What are we talking about here? He's not a tzaddik, right? But he doesn't battle. I thought that's what we said. The difference between a tzaddik and a Bainani is that the Bainani battles. What happens if there's a Bainani who doesn't battle in some area but hasn't transformed his soul powers? That's the subject matter.
Okay. And he's consequently never obliged to wage war against it. Thus, for example, in the case of one who is by nature an assiduous student, because he is organically so disposed, and is likewise free from conflict in regard to sexual desire by reason of his frigid nature, and similar, I cannot read today, with the other mundane pleasures wherein he naturally lacks any feeling of enjoyment. Hence, he does not need to concentrate so much on the greatness of God to consciously create a spirit of knowledge and fear of God in his mind in order to guard himself against the violation of the prohibited commandments, or to arouse the love of God in his heart to induce his attachment to him through the fulfillment of the positive commandments and the study of the Torah.
Which balances everything. Connected cool.
Balances everything.
So we spoke, I believe it was last chapter, possibly the one before. How does the Beinoni fight this fight? The Beinoni, he wants a ham sandwich, and he wants illicit sexual intimacy, and he wants, fill in your blank, he wants to rob the Bank of England, Chas v'sholem. Wants all this negative stuff. How does the Beinoni fight? How does he win so that he toes the line and he doesn't sin in his thoughts or his speech or his deeds?
He remembers what Yah says, and then he does it.
Right, he gives himself a stern talking to, and he says, I don't want to be separated from God even for a moment, right? Mind over matter. This is the Beinoni's secret weapon, right?
Mm-hmm.
How easy is that, did we say last week?
It's
really hard, right? It's really hard. There's a fight there. There's a struggle there. What happens if the person's towing the line, but there's no fight, there's no struggle? What does God think about that?
I just don't think it's an area that, I mean, it's wonderful, but I don't think it's an
sounds
area.
wonderful from our perspective.
It doesn't
I don't think
sound
it's
like
something
it's
that
worthy
it's
of much praise or condemnation.
Right, because it's like,
if that's his natural inclination,
What's he
this
changing?
is
What's
how
he
God
transforming?
made him.
Right.
if you naturally have
Right?
brown
God made a rock
eyes,
a rock, and the rock doesn't sin, right?
right. If you naturally have brown eyes, it's not like you tried to have brown eyes. You didn't do
Right.
something great.
And you're
It
all
just
mazel
is
tov that you have this beautiful
Yeah,
brown
it's
eyes.
just
Well,
brown
okay,
eyes.
I didn't do anything. It's not like I bought contacts, right?
Right. Okay.
So
All right.
that's the point that we're honing in
The
on.
tinted ones.
Yeah.
For him suffices the hidden love that is in the heart of all Jews, who are called those who love his name. Therefore, he is not at all called one who is serving.
So just to back up one sentence really quick, the Alter Rebbe here introduced the concept, and we've talked about it, I believe, once before, and we're going to hit it very hard in the next section. This hidden love, ahavat mitzuteret. The hidden love that exists within the heart of every Jew. It's an inheritance from Abraham, right? We're going to talk about that a lot more later. The Alter Rebbe is now just mentioning it. This guy's a Beinoni because he's got the Yiddish in the Neshama, right? He's got the Jewy thing going on. He's got Abraham, he's got Moshe, he's got Yeshua in him. And this allows him to toe the line, right?
Mm-hmm.
At the same point, it's not because he conquered a city. It's because he inherited the city.
Right. Okay. Okay. Never let love is making or accomplished by any means. But it is our inheritance.
Why don't you reread that there for a bit?
Okay. Therefore, he is not at all called one who is serving, inasmuch as this latent love is not of his making or accomplishment by any means, but it is our inheritance that has come down from the patriarchs to the whole community of Israel, as will be discussed further.
And this again is our next big section, revealing this hidden love. That's chapters 18 through 25, which we will be hitting shortly.
So,
18 to 25?
That's our next section coming up.
so too is one who, although by nature is not an assiduous student, has yet accustomed himself to study with great diligence, so that the habit has become second nature with him. For him too suffices the innate love, unless he wishes to study more than his wont.
So we talk about an individual who, he grew up with a nice Yiddish mama, right? And the Yiddish mama says, when you wake up in the morning, you say, Modani, say your Shema, wash your hands, right? Wash your hands before you eat bread. All these different mitzvahs and things, and this is just what he does. Before he eats anything, he makes a bracha. Is he thinking about it? I don't know. But the fact of the matter is, he has made this a second nature of himself. He toes the line just because this is what he does. I was told this is the right thing. I'm a smart enough guy to know to do the right thing. I did the right thing. What do you want from me, right? It's not because he had to fight for it. There's a...
What about the guy that fights for it and then accomplishes that goal?
This is such an amazing individual, right?
Oh, okay.
Clearly, his accomplishment is so much greater than one who just inherited it.
Oh, I get you.
And this is similar to what they say in I believe it's a Mishnah. It talks about that the convert is the shame of the Jewish people.
Yeah.
And at first you're like, what do you mean what is this, right? The meaning is, if you're a homie Jew, right, and you were born with...
This is, you do it. Why do you do it? I don't know. I do it.
I don't
That's
know.
what we
It's
do.
Pesach. We eat matzah. What do you want from me?
Right.
as opposed to someone who...
inclination is to take for granted.
Yes,
innate,
exactly.
nature.
What happens to someone who was not born with that innate nature or did not have it developed early on, and he chose it or she chose it later in life? They're going to have a revealed love and passion for
Bubby
it.
used to say that all the time.
Rejoice.
And that's the meaning of the Mishnah, right? The converts are the shame of the Jewish people because they come in on fire for God, and we're just like, yeah, what? God, he's there, what? Right?
I was in the other room, he's watching
always
TV.
been there.
Yeah, why is this so fantastic all of a sudden?
Right.
In truth, this is about the... I mean, I don't want to tangent too far, but this is the month of Elul, too, where we should be re-examining our daily service with God and our daily love of God, and making sure that that passion's still there year by year.
This is not the month of Elul, but what you're speaking about.
This is the time during the year when we revisit those things, right?
Okay. You know, and I was going to say, you know, at some point you should share why we're not on the regular schedule, which we did last year. But is this being a review? We're taking it more at our pace.
I think you explained it very well. Last year we went through the entire Tanya, all 5 books, Baruch Hashem, and we kept with the daily study schedule, which everybody should be keeping, even outside of this study.
Right.
But we just love the Tanya so much that we wanted to come back and take another look at it. We wanted to go slower this time so that we can really have some good discussion and bring some other things and not be so hammered into a schedule. Again, it doesn't change the fact that we should all be studying Tanya regularly with a schedule with all of our rest of our brothers and sisters.
Right.
But Baruch Hashem, what a great opportunity that we have to be able to study it a little bit deeper.
Amen. This will explain the
So
statement.
that was perfect time to interject.
Not at all. Baruch Hashem.
In the Gemara that one who serves God refers to one who reviews his lesson 101 times.
Yeah, not less than 101.
That's what I was going for. While one who does not serve him refers to one who repeats his lesson no more than 100 times.
So this is from Talmud Chagiga, page 9, side B. Do we know the story? We did study it last year, after all.
Just explained it.
What is the difference between one who studies 100 times and 101 times? The Alter Rebbe is going to explain that. Who is the kid who studies 100 times, and what is that practice for maybe some of our viewers who don't necessarily know?
That is the quote minimum requirement.
Okay, why
of
is
all
that?
students.
Why was that
but
requirement?
The 101 is taking that extra effort.
You're going any other mile, right? And that's on top of all the rest of this. It's something to ask, right? Been working all day, and the boss asks you to stay another hour on top of your 10-hour shift. You're like, I just worked 10 hours, right? Why did
regular 10-hour shift?
Right. Why did they study 100 times? Couldn't 10 have done it?
This is a basic way that we learn is by repetition.
Repetition. Yes. Specifically, this goes back to the time, and we're talking, and this is Gemara, oral law, Mishnah, right?
Oh, right. So
back in the day, especially oral law,
orally,
over and over and over again, right? I think
couldn't write it on the board 100 times. They didn't have a board.
They didn't have a board, right? They didn't have paper by and large. So Rabbi Gordon says you have a class of 30 people, and there are 2 books there. It's a lot, right? So one guy learns to read like this, another guy learns to read upside down. You know, they didn't have books that you can go back and refer, right? Today, I understand that I don't necessarily. I mean, this is dangerous territory. We should all try to learn everything we can about godliness. Baruch Hashem, He's given us wonderful tools that if we don't know something, we can look it up really quickly, right? Rabbi Google will tell us, oh, you're looking for that? It's in Chagiga 9, right?
Rabbi Google?
We call him Rabbi Google.
Just a joke.
It's a joke.
A bad joke, probably.
Bad joke, yeah.
So, back in the day, they didn't have Google, and they didn't have books. So if you wanted to know something, you repeated it 100 times.
Yeah.
Right? And after that, you probably know it, right? Another example Rabbi Gordon used was a commercial, right?
If you wanted
you
to
see
know
a commercial 100
something
times
and remember it, and really know it, and
right?
remember it, and be able to repeat it.
Remember.
Not just
100 times sounds
today,
pretty
but
good.
Tomorrow or the next day.
To know it backwards and forwards?
100 times. Yeah.
Right.
So or 101.
So that's the baseline regular. And the Gemara here, the Talmud, talks about, what about this 101 concept?
Extra
it just means you're going for it.
Yeah.
Right. Go ahead.
While one who does not serve him refers to one who repeats his lesson no more than 100 times. This is because in those days it was customary to review each lesson 100 times, as indeed illustrated in the Gemara. By the example taken from the market, where donkey drivers used to hire themselves out at a rate of 10
Parsings.
Parsings.
Parsing, as I recall, is something along the lines of, it's a Persian mile.
For a zuz.
2 zuzim. A parsing is something like a mile, 0.2, I think, is what it was.
But for 11
so
parsons, charged
currency.
2 zuzim, because that exceeded their customary practice.
We have a similar thing if you ever deal with phone companies and long-distance calls and things like that overseas, and it's like, you know, you'll get, for $10 or whatever, you could talk for, 5 minutes. But if you go 5 minutes and 1 second, right, they'll charge you another $10 for another 5-minute section, even though you went 1 second in there.
Right.
Doesn't change the fact that you broke the pattern that we had here, right?
That's a normal mode of there's a name for it.
But not prorating, right?
No.
It's the opposite of that.
Yeah, and it doesn't work out well for us oftentimes.
It doesn't work out well for us, but it is the natural way of things, right?
The terms we're using here is similar. This is where we get the, what is it? It's kind of a midrash of a song, Pesach song, and the goat or the kid.
Oh yeah,
two
zuzim.
Chad Gadya, right?
Chad Gadya.
Chad Gadya.
Okay, for the same reason, the 101st revision, which is beyond the normal practice to which the student had been accustomed since childhood, is considered equivalent to all the previous 100 times put together, and even surpassing them in endurance and effort, hence entitling him to be called one who serves God.
Right, because he went above and beyond. This is what God is talking about. This is what the Alter Rebbe is talking about in the concept of these 2 levels of Beinoni. One is the Beinoni who serves God. The other one is the Beinoni who doesn't serve God. One is the Beinoni, the one who serves God is the one who battles. The one who doesn't serve God, he doesn't battle. It comes naturally to him. The one who battles, this is the one who goes from 100 to 101, right? And he knows that it's hard, and he's fighting through, and he's pushing through, and there's a lot of horsepower there, and there's a lot of energy there, and there's a lot of holiness and reward there. There's some schus, there's some merit there, right? Whereas opposed to the person who's just like, I did what God wanted me to do. What do you want? Okay, well, maybe you're off the hook for the bad guys, but like, what did you do to hasten the coming of Mashiach, right? Did you do anything towards that? Or did you just cover your own tuchus? Perhaps that was a little inappropriate. Sorry.
For in order to change his habitual nature, he must arouse the love of God by means of meditation in his mind on the greatness of God in order to gain mastery over the nature that is in the left part of the heart, which is full of blood of the animal soul.
So we're talking about this individual who doesn't necessarily doesn't serve God. He's a Beinoni, he doesn't sin, but he's not fighting the fight, right? For this person, it's like, it just comes naturally for him, right? And as such, you don't need to worry about mastery over the nature in the left part of the heart, right? You don't need to harness or control anything. You just need to do what you know that you had to do anyways, right? You get up at 6:30 and you whatever, right?
Originating in the Kalipa, from where his nature comes, this is a perfect service for a Beinoni, or he must awaken the hidden love in his heart to control, through it, the nature that is in the left part. For this, too, is called service, the waging of war against his nature and inclination by means of exciting the love that is hidden in his heart. However, if he wages no war at all, the said love in itself can in no way be credited to his service.
Right. One of the mitzvahs of the 613 mitzvot in the Torah is that you should serve God, right? What happens if you're doing your thing and it comes naturally and you're not really serving God? You're just not.
So there's almost
you're just not transgressing, right?
Right.
That's exactly the answer. What's your kavanah? Are you a warrior on the battlefield? Are you in the ring trying to fight, or are you? I'm just clean up here, you know. And which do you think God prefers? I mean, before we do that, questions on anything we read? We just finished the chapter, Baruch Hashem.
Well, the last sentence really
17
says
is
that
my
if he
favorite.
wages no war, the said love in itself can in no way be credited to his service.
You can't call it service. You can call it love, fine, but it's hidden
So the
love,
answer
right?
to your last question is obvious.
It's not passionate. You know, it's not. You know, you're not shaking and sweating for this. How real is it? You know?
For the what is it? For the one who knows enough. So.
Oh, right. For those who understand, this is sufficient. So, the big question of chapter 15 in our great humility, because we know almost nothing, right? However, we study God and godliness, and hopefully we can get some kind of an image, right? Who are we to think we can understand God at the same point he asked us to try? So let's try.
It's funny.
Which do you think God prefers? The Beinoni who fights and shakes
Yes.
and sweats, or the one who it just comes naturally and he doesn't really have to fight for it, and he's really not drawn to go out to the clubs and everything else that's out there? Why do you think God likes the former rather than the latter?
Because you're in it. Because it's like
One does it really without having to arouse that love of God and to focus on
it's
God,
not a relationship.
because it's more innate, and the one who's struggling is actively
looking
focused.
for God, trying to reach
Absolutely.
him. Right.
So let's just take a step back in a reality check here. There's God, infinite, creates the universe, he makes a world, he puts the Jew in the world, he gives the Jew mitzvahs, and he says, have at it, right? Make the world a fit dwelling for me, says God. And we say, okay. And, why is breathing not a mitzvah?
Because we don't even try it. It just is natural.
You're probably going to end up doing it anyways, right?
Right, you can
If you want to be alive.
you can be in deep sleep and your
You'll be
body
breathing.
is still breathing.
It's still going to happen. It doesn't take anything, right?
Right.
If
No
God wanted
effort.
robots, you've heard this before, right?
Right.
He would have stuck with the angels and he wouldn't have given the Torah to us.
Right.
He gave the Torah to us. The Torah is here on earth. What does that mean? It means God knew, and this is kind of like our other study, not subject to the law of God, right? When God gave us the Torah, he says, do all these mitzvahs. He makes the world, he puts the Jew, he gives the mitzvahs, and we, he expected we were going to keep it perfectly? Did God ever one time think that we were going to keep the Torah perfect?
No.
Never. Does that mean we were banished from salvation? We were never going to get saved for our entire existence as a humanity?
No.
Not at all. From the beginning, he knew, right? He knew when he put the tree in the garden that he had about a couple
hot
hours
second.
to go before it's all going to go downhill in a
Was
rapid
that a
meteor.
no? Okay, let me have some of that.
Real bad. So why? Why did he do that? Why didn't God make us able to keep every mitzvah perfect? I mean, if I would, right, if you put yourself in God, would it ruin some vast eternal plan? If I wasn't so tempted for all of this
Because
filth?
we're not made like the angels.
We're not made like the angels, and why does God have to distinguish and differentiate? Why not just have one? Why do we need angels and people are going to mess
He
up?
needs somebody doing the right thing. That's all.
Yeah, right. How could he take it
He
otherwise?
wanted those to serve him who choose to serve him, to do the mitzvah.
This is the real thesis of Book 2 of Tanya, which Bezrat Hashem will get to. How God creates the world, right? God creates the world. When he does that, if God were to reveal the whole plan, if God were to show himself, there would be no more free choice.
Right.
How do you disrespect this fire coming out of the mountain, right? The people were so terrified at Mount Sinai that it said that it was like in the Midrash, God held the mountain over them. Said, if you want my Torah, fine. If not, I'm going to drop this mountain on you. And they said, okay, well, we'll take it. I mean,
No truth, really. But the biggest thing about Yah is, and the Torah is, and this is why I think even as a child I loved it so much, because I'm very much about bring it down here,
right?
is it's always messy and dirty. Starts out always in real life, messy situations, even the desert, dirty.
Sure.
Yeshua, where was he? He was in the dirt and the mud with the sinners. He wasn't in the nice, he wasn't. It's always about realism.
Mm-hmm.
How are you going to handle what is going to happen in today in your life when it gets messy and it gets real and all those things? That's where God wants to be found, right there in the very, like you said, the lowest space, in the littlest, messiest
in
place.
the dirt.
That's where God is. And his holiness, which if you think about,
It's
that we
so
can't
holy.
even imagine,
Right.
all of that comes down to that one little speck of dirty, nasty, normal life
Right.
that everybody's trying to get away from and he's trying to get in.
Right.
Even in the mud and
In the-
blood
And the
beer.
beer, right? That's very
You know,
true.
I mean, but that's how beautiful it is, and nobody gets that. They're always trying to escape it, but he wants to be here. He doesn't want us to
Right.
go there. He wants to be here with
He's
us.
had there, right?
Yeah.
He's here now.
Yeah, just
So
beautiful.
let's do some critical thinking, okay? Let's string these concepts together. If God knew from the beginning that we were going to sin anyways, and allotted for salvation through that somehow. We're not going into that. And we know that God cares about the minutia, and he's chosen to be affected by the minutia. Even though God in his Torah, he says in the prophet, I am God, I have not changed, right? There's nothing outside of God, right? What does that mean in relation to chapter 15, based on what we studied tonight? If he knew you were going to fail from the beginning.
He exalts in the minutia.
Exalts in the minutia. What does this mean? What does this mean for us practically?
It means this exact Beinoni, is that in the struggle to overcome this,
God is glorified.
God is glorified. And
that is the highest service.
Light will shine through that war.
It's going to happen.
Yeah.
We can't stop it.
Right.
Might not happen through us.
Right.
God forbid, right?
Right.
But we were crafted for such a time as this.
Right.
Think Esther, right?
Isn't that beautiful? Isn't that beautiful? That's a great plan. It's messy. It's a great plan.
Right. So, just going one step further with that, how do we look at that? A normal
Usually
human.
not well.
Not well, almost ever, right? And that's
Not
why
well,
we study
usually.
Tanya.
Because in the middle of the struggle, it's not pretty.
We're like, why hast thou forsaken me, right? I mean, we're sitting here miserable. Like, I love Rabbi Gordon's example of the alcoholic, right? 25 years sober. And this guy says, yes, I am whoever, and I am an alcoholic, right? 25 years, you're still an alcoholic? He's like, yeah, because I wake up in the morning and I want to drink. And later in Tanya, the Alter Rebbe is going to talk about this individual saying, come on, 25 years, you're still tempted with this stuff? Shouldn't you be a tzaddik by now? What does the Alter Rebbe say? Learn your place, right? You need to understand that God has chosen you to be a Beinoni, not a tzaddik. We learned in the other chapter, not everybody can be a tzaddik. God needs tzaddikim to shepherd the rest of us.
Right.
But at the same point, and look at 15, look at chapter 15 here. The one who serves God, the one who doesn't serve God.
Right.
Which do we say God prefers?
The one who serves.
Logically.
Yeah.
The one who's fighting, right? What's the difference between a tzaddik and a Beinoni? The tzaddik doesn't fight.
Right.
Whose service do you think God appreciates more?
The Beinoni.
The Beinoni who fights over the tzaddik. Now do you feel holy? Because you're doing the holiest service that God could ask. And if you question that even for a little bit, well, what about the high priest? Da-da-da-da. How many high priests are there? How many tzaddikim are there? And how many Beinonim are there?
Lots
We
of Beinoni.
vastly outnumber the tzaddikim. Why? Because God wanted more people to be mess-ups, right?
No, because he just doesn't.
Because this service is more precious to him than that of a tzaddik. And this is what we studied a couple chapters ago when it says, even the most righteous tzaddik, perfect tzaddik, cannot stand in the place of a Baal Tshuva, right?
Right.
Someone who fell and came back. What does that mean?
Right.
It means God cares about the people who come back and the people who fight, and he loves that service more. It's more pleasurable and sweeter to him than the service of a tzaddik.
Right.
That's 15. That's chapter 15.
You know, I just looked ahead the first couple sentences of 16, and it seems to continue on the same concept.
Oh, we're still in the war between the worlds here. Or souls. One of these days I'll get that right.
Yeah. And how big is this section? What chapters?
Ooh, let's see. We end at 17. So we got this one and the one after that, and then we're moving into our new section, which is this Ahava Misuteret, this hidden love, and how to reveal this hidden love. So chapter 15 is an incredibly powerful chapter.
Brushed over just now.
Right. We just mentioned it. We mentioned it a chapter or so ago as well. But we didn't really get in there at all. And we are going to spend much time on that. What is the hidden love? How do we access it? And that's very, very important.
This is, that brushing, that touching on it, and we're going to get into it. Just wait. This is just the difference between, and why I like going back and looking at the concepts and studying them over in the glossary.
The back of the book is so helpful.
Yeah.
So go ahead in the back of the book and learn in this glossary, what is this Ahava Misuteret, or Ahavat Misuteret? It's hidden love. Very powerful. But without... Yeah, we're going to close here in just a second. Just one more once over of 15. I don't want to lose the message of 15. It is the hope we're looking for in this dark world where we fight to serve God every day and we don't see the reward and we don't see the fruit and we get discouraged and it's a mess, right? We need to realize and recognize and understand that this is exactly what God wants from us, right? And that God doesn't judge us based on our end result, like we said earlier. He judges us on our reaction. God looks at us to see, is he going to be this, or is she going to be this kind of person who's going to overcome this thing, or not? How could but God possibly see that if he didn't put obstacles in our path? It's the same message as Baal last week, right? We need to recognize and understand that God has given us this path to not just develop us, to turn us into something we don't even know. He loves what we're doing right now.
It's right
When
down
we
to
come
the
up with a
very-
temptation and we say, I know, but God, there's no sweeter pleasure to him, right? Remember that the next time you struggle with your lot.
That's identical to the very, very foundation and core of why there's a free will and why we have to.
This is the concept of Kabbalah, right? You say it's mysticism, okay, whatever. I think it's more practical than most, right?
Oh, it's technology.
Right.
That's exactly what it is. It's technology. It's
I
how
like
does
the
it
way-
work?
Like Jonathan Kahn said it, you'll never win if you don't know you're in the ring, right?
How does it work?
Know who your opponent is.
Right.
Know what your inclination is going to be. Know when you
Know what the game is.
get
so
hit
you know
on
how
this
to play
side
it.
that you're going to need to do this over here.
Right,
Otherwise, I mean, and this is how
Absolutely.
we will be able to not just serve God in this place and be miserable through it, right? But actually live blessed lives where we see happiness everywhere. That comes from us recognizing this fight and fighting it well, right? The fact of the matter is we're going through either way, so.
What would what's her name say? Do it miserable.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
For now. But this long, shorter way, we can actually do it with joy.
Right.
If we can change the way we understand and the way
We can do it
and
with
we
joy
feel.
even in the misery.
Right.
And it's
Because
so-
the joy of the Lord doesn't depend on our circumstances.
Exactly.
Right.
You need a bigger
Exactly.
picture than that, right? The Alter Rebbe is trying to give us that bigger picture.
Right. Right.
So all of 15 is really encapsulated in this struggle that we're talking about is the perfect service of the Beit.
Baruch
That's all
Hashem.
we're trying to say.
Amen.
And the perfect service of Yah. Amen.
And how much pleasure he gets from it.
Right.
And if you're the reward type, what kind of reward is going to be for that in the future, right? Greater reward than you could possibly imagine because it's God's favorite service. So, right.
Right.
All right.
All right.
That's it for now. We'll get the camera here and then.
Are you going to pray, you said?
Oh, yeah, I guess so. Well, all right, that's fine. Rabbana Shalom, Master of the Universe, you are awesome. Your Torah is awesome. Your celestial format and the way that you've created the world is incredible, and we are truly in awe by it. We appreciate everything that you've done for us here tonight. We ask that you bless us with your chokhmah and bina da'at, your wisdom, understanding, and knowledge, that we should be able to integrate these messages and in such a way to be able to make this world a fit dwelling place for you, because we won't be able to do it without you. We also ask that you bless our intellect and our emotion, that we should be able to more clearly see you in every struggle that we face and not just try to fight the struggle, but to try to connect to you in it.
Amen.
Thank you again for everything that you've done for us. We love you. We thank you. Please be with us on our way home and give us your insight. B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach, amen.
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 All right.
Amen.
I'll grab the camera. Oh, you got that?
I can't.
Well, I got it. That's okay. Shalom. Join us next week.
Shalom. Hey, Lisa.